and welcome to another episode of Small Caps. My name is Jess Holland, and I'm your host for today's interview with QMines. This is a Queensland-based copper and gold explorer with the ticker code QML. Joining me is the Managing Director, Andrew Sparke. Hi, Andrew. It's great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hi, Jess. Thanks for your time this morning. Great to be back.
Perfect. Right, let's just get straight into it. So, Andrew, can you provide our audience with an overview of the Mt Chalmers project?
Yeah, sure thing. All right. So QMines is a relatively new company. We listed on the ASX in May 21. So we've only been around a little over 2 years now. And our flagship project is obviously the Mt Chalmers project you alluded to. Mt Chalmers is in Queensland. It's located just off the coast out of a regional town called Rockhampton. So it's about 20 k's off the coast and 20 k's out of Rockhampton, which is great because it gives us lots of infrastructure. We've got a ready-made workforce there in town, everything we need to build a modern-day mine. And it's a copper and gold historic producer. So it historically produced, it's about 1.2 million tonnes of copper and gold at quite a high grade, at about 2% copper, 3.6 grams gold, and about 19 grams silver. So yeah, it's a high grade historic producer, and we think that really bodes well for hopefully being able to turn this on or reinvigorate the mine and get it going again, in the short to medium term. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so just shifting gears a little bit. So could you provide us a little bit of background on your team? Because I know there's been a little bit of change on your board. So could you give us, a bit of background on that?
Yeah, there has. We've actually just brought in a new chairman, Simon Kitson, who's a real veteran in the industry. He's, funnily enough, I worked with him 15 years ago in the capital markets. And so we've always stayed in touch, and he really liked what we were doing here at Mt Chalmers. And he's really got a very strong, sustainability sort of focus and copper focus. So, which really matched with our values, being, obviously one of only 3 ASX listed companies that's certified carbon neutral today. So we really wanted to, bring him in. We knew he could add a lot of value. But he's, got a very strong capital markets background. It's been a great addition. As well as that, most of our team have actually come from our previous business, which was called Alt Resources. And that Alt, it was a relatively small business at the start, but I think it was the speed at which we delivered that business plan that got us some attention. So we had a gold mine in WA called Bottle Creek, and the same team basically delivered 40,000 meters of drilling in 2 years. 6 resource updates, a maiden reserve statement, feasibility study, all within a really condensed sort of timeline. So we've got a really, can-do sort of, team that really, roll up their sleeves and very hands-on and like to really get things moving. So that was Alyssa Hansen, who's on our board, James Anderson, and many of our other staff. So James is more in an operational role. So we've got a great team that delivered, obviously that business plan before the sale to the private equity group, and so effectively we're doing it again. So I think we're already up to our 4th resource upgrade. We've already drilled probably, to guess, 20,000 meters, and we're just flying. So it's the real point of difference for our business, I suppose, is the fact that we really like to move things along quickly.
Wow, that must give investors, a lot of confidence in terms of your team's ability to execute, given your history of working together, and now obviously getting Simon Kitson on board, who is, obviously a veteran in the industry. So well done. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So now, could you provide, us some information or an overview of the company's sort of exploration and development strategy where you're sitting now?
Yeah, sure. Good question. All right. So I think to really understand where QMines is going from here, you've got to, you've got to really understand the markets and what's going to really drive, maximize the value for our shareholders. And so my background, just to sort of, I probably should have mentioned it before, but, I sort of ran a resources fund for quite some time, and I've been in the capital markets for some time, principally, I suppose, funding and supporting small cap and mid cap resources companies.
Was that Olive Capital, Andrew? Sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's right. So that's Olive Capital's my business. Before that, I worked with a fund called Lansted, and before that, I worked with Simon at a boutique broking firm in Sydney called Helmsec, which many of your listeners will know. So I'm coming up to I think it's 20 years now. So don't the baby face doesn't necessarily give it away, but yeah, I think this is my 20 years sort of funding resources businesses. So yeah, so I think it's important for your listeners to know that we have a really deep understanding of the capital markets and how to execute these business plans and therefore generate value for shareholders. And that's really important, I think, in a management team. So going back to your question around strategy and how we want to execute this business, I suppose what we've done is we've looked really closely at the copper space, particularly the producers on the ASX. And when you peel back the onion and get into the detail, it's quite fascinating that there's only actually 4 or 5 copper producers, pure play copper producers, that is, on the ASX. So there's a real scarcity of these quality producers around, and and if you compare that to say gold, there's probably there's 40 plus producers out there. So I think that really bodes well for being in the copper space, because when the markets finally come back to copper, and they will, whether late this year, early next, I think we're going to see some real outsized returns. But yeah, so in terms of strategy, we want to be the next genuine Australian-based copper producer, okay? And we think that third spot is firmly up for grabs, because you look down the list, there's the top 2 have got some really significant copper production, but the third spot and fourth spot, they're only sort of small producers. So I think looking at QMines strategy, we've got a sort of a dual track strategy where we're trying to progress our Mt Chalmers project towards production, whilst we're trying to grow it at the same time. And running those 2 sort of work streams in parallel, I think really means that we'll be able to deliver this business plan a lot quicker. So, and I can talk about that a bit further a bit more in the interview. So
yeah, perfect. So let's get into some of the detail of that sort of strategy. So you had a recent exploration survey where you had 34 electromagnetic anomalies show up. So could you elaborate for our audience on the significance of those findings in particular, and how they might influence your exploration plans moving forward? Let's start.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. So it's very rare that you find a VMS deposit, which is the geological style of this Mt Chalmers ore body, that doesn't have multiple deposits within a cluster. So they're known, these VMS deposits are known for clustering. Okay, and you can typically see between 5 and 40 of these within a cluster. So we knew that this whole this whole tenement package, or this whole project, would have more copper and gold deposits. We just didn't know how many, and initially we didn't know where to find them. So we started in December and January with a very large helicopter-borne electromagnetic survey. And as you said in the question, it showed up about 34 new anomalies that have never been drilled, never been ground truth, never been had any mapping or anything. So we're obviously quite excited about that. And we know that not all of them are going to be mineralised. But I'm not kidding when I say we went into ground truth, the first 5 of these priority targets, and 4 of them have already come up. So, and by that I mean we're seeing outcropping gossans, typically with copper mineralisation with XRF at surface. One of those, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later in the interview, is where we're seeing up to 30% copper and these copper-bearing minerals like azurite and malachite. So it's a really exciting time to be a QMines shareholder. I think this year is going to be we think there's potential for multiple discoveries within this package. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in the business. We've got staff up on site that are fist pumping and they're getting quite energized about what they're doing every day and what they're working on, which is a really nice backdrop to be around. So yeah.
Sure. Well, just, and volcanic hosted massive sulfide sort of deposits, they're kind of, just for our audience, kind of their sake of understanding what a VHMS is. So that's kind of like your higher grade copper anomaly deposit types. Yes?
Exactly right. So VMSs have generally 2 key characteristics. Number one, they're the highest value per copper bearing deposit style. So basically high value per tonne. So, generally high grade, better economics, those sort of things. But also they're known for clustering. So they're actually, if you can picture, like all your fingers and it's like a volcano under an ocean where there's multiple sort of, shoots, so to speak, or outcroppings or deposits that form on the ocean floor. So they'll basically come up through a vent and they'll spill out over the ocean floor. And so when you have a deep dive into the QMines business, you'll see our deposits really quite flat lying, really quite high grade, and all those great things. So yeah.
So interesting. Okay, so now regarding the new semi-massive sulfide discovery at Mount Chalmers Southwest, how significant are those intersections that you've reported? Such as the 12 meters at 4.38%. Equivalent, and also adding to that, what do they suggest about the potential resource size and quality in the newly discovered area?
Yeah, really good question. So I think effectively what we're trying to do here is we're trying to blend, some what I call brownfields sort of exploration, and that basically means some near mine exploration where we've got a very strong chance of coming up with incremental gains around the Mt Chalmers deposit. With some what we call greenfields exploration and that's largely referring to those 34 anomalies out in the region. So they're brand new discoveries. They're a lot higher risk in terms of making discoveries in those regions where you don't have as much data and information. But thankfully we've been very successful so far. So in terms of Mt Chalmers Southwest, it was basically an extension drilling program down southwest of the Mt Chalmers historic mine site. And this particular region is known for having some of the highest grades in the deposit. So we saw a lot of sort of 15 to 20% copper equivalent intersections over a nice width down at what's called the West Lode historically. So yeah, so it was always an area we want to get in and have a good look at, and so we started to drill a couple of months ago. I think it was in early May down there, and obviously we've had some early great success as you alluded to. So combination of really good grades, really nice widths. I will mention there's a lot more assays in the labs at the moment, and they're basically imminent. So we should see a lot more of those back in the coming days and maybe a week or so, which would be great.
Brilliant. Now, you guys have just put out an announcement sort of in the last week or so. So the recent maiden drill hole at the Artillery Road electromagnetic anomaly seems to be showing, to be very promising with a 20-meter intersection and a strong pyrohotite. How do you say that?
I can't pronounce it either, so don't worry. I'm not.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Pyrrhotite, so yeah.
Fine. Okay, and it's containing visible chalcopyrite. Okay, so all tick for all VHMS. So can you discuss the significance of this finding and how it aligns with your expectations for kind of potential large-scale discoveries in the area?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think the first thing I'd say here is that it's very rare that you actually go and drill the first of your 34 anomalies and you hit. And so it's obviously really exciting for the business. So this is separate to the new discovery we made southwest of the pit. So this is our second discovery, which is fantastic. And yeah, effectively we don't know. I'll be candid and say we don't know enough about it yet. So we've only got about a dozen holes into it. Sorry, half a dozen holes into it so far. So we're still really working that out. We've got obviously the assays in the labs. But as that announcement alluded to, we've obviously seen copper mineralisation, which is called chalcopyrite, in those semi-massive sulfides. So that's exciting. So it means it's mineralised. We know that there's a very long strike length here. So we've mapped outcropping gossans that again mineralised over about 700-metre strike length. And so we're still sort of it's funny, we're still sort of working out the puzzle here. And so what we're planning to do is, we've got a couple more holes we want to drill there. We've got, I think, a 30-hole program for about 5,000 meters of drilling that we'll be drilling over the course of the next month or so. But yeah, it could be big. There is a very large, magnetic anomaly to the east of this deposit. So we've got to be candid, we've got a lot more work to do here, but it's just fantastic for our shareholders that, the first intersection came up with 20 meters of massive sulfide. So it's obviously going to be something, and we'll no doubt report back next time we talk and tell you all about it. So
amazing. Yeah. So Andrew, you just mentioned that you're halfway through your 30-hole, 5,000-meter RC drill program at this new anomaly. And so can you just give our audience, or shed some light on the objectives of this program and the specific goals that you aim to achieve with these drill holes?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, look, the first goal is going to be we want to test that 700-meter strike extent and see if there's mineralisation over that strike extent. We also want to see the other main objective is firstly to try and understand the orientation of this ore body. So obviously, the first hole hit, but we don't know if 20-meter intersection is a good representation of what the ore, and we don't know which way it's dipping. There's probably a lot of questions here. So firstly, in terms of what we're trying to understand is, number one is the geometry of the system, the length of the system, the grade of the system, and other potential areas. There is there potential for more discoveries. And the little hint I would sort of allude to here is that we've announced that there are 3 EM anomalies along what looks like a strike line, which looks like a structure. So there's potentially more than one deposit here. We just don't know enough. So the objectives are to really understand what it all means and to test the whole strike and all these EM anomalies. And then obviously move into the region and start to test a whole number of others as well.
Okay, brilliant. So now we've done some electromagnetics. We're sort of seeing a lot of really exciting stuff. Now, can you elaborate for us sort of the timeline and the process for evaluating these results and making more informed decisions based on these findings?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've basically got, I think it's about 6 holes in the labs at the moment at Artillery Road. So, they're on rush. So we use ALS in Brisbane for those results. So we expect to have those back, I'd say, in the coming weeks. So that'll give you a sense of the first, the timing. We put in assays generally on a Friday every week. So we hope to have sort of regular news flow, sort of almost on a weekly or bi-weekly basis from here, which will give our shareholders regular updates on how this discovery is progressing. And we're also going to bring in some more geophysical equipment and do some ground-based geophysical equipment work to really test a few other areas, including that large, magnetic anomaly to the east, which looks, is certainly another target out there. So there's a fair bit of work to do here, and it's going to, take a couple of months to do that work. So we'll provide regular updates as time goes on as to how it's all progressing.
Yeah, brilliant. And so I don't mean to jump the gun here, but, following the success at Mt Chalmers Southwest, and the Artillery Road prospects, what is the next area that you intend to drill?
All right, good question. So we want to move next into a new area that's, we've already put an announcement out about this. It's called Tracker 1. And at Tracker 1, it's actually only about 1 to 1.5 kilometres away from Artillery Road. But at Tracker 1, we've now identified a number of targets. So we've got, I think it's about 10 targets up at Tracker 1 that we want to go and start to test. And the main target where there's quite a dominant, EM anomaly, we announced only a matter of weeks ago that we've actually gone and ground truth that anomaly, basically making sure there's no houses or sheds or things that obscure the data. And we've actually come across, and it's such a shame, Jess, but our geologists have come across an outcrop in Gossan, which had, and I know this is a bit technical, but it's azurite and malachite, which are all these sort of copper-bearing deposit or minerals.
Yep.
And they're XRFing up to about 30% copper. So that's another really exciting area. Again, it hasn't been drilled. We've found some small, historic prospecting pits in that region. But this, if it comes up, would be our third sort of virgin, discovery. So you can see we're pretty excited about what this region holds. There are a lot more that we want to test after that, but, you can see there's a pipeline of sort of, drill targets we're going to chase and therefore a pipeline of news flow that we'll be delivering into the market over the coming sort of weeks and months. Sure,
that's excellent. Okay, so now confirming, outstanding recoveries from the final pre-feasibility level metallurgical work is a key highlight, obviously. Now, can you provide some more insight into these recoveries and explain, how they contribute to the economic viability of Mt Chalmers, as a potential standalone mining operation?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think to give people a bit of context here, I think it's worth mentioning that open pit copper deposits that have got really good grade and really good mets are very, very rare. Okay. Now, why do I mention that? Mainly because open pittable deposits are generally, have stronger economics. You can mine them a lot quicker. You can mine more volume. So therefore, the old, economic principles of economies of scale, apply, where your unit costs per ton of mining comes down, and all those sort of great things. So we're really lucky here that this is a very flat-lying deposit at Mt Chalmers, and it's very shallow. So that basically means it's going to be quite a big open pit deposit. And you would have seen from our recent announcement, we've done a pit optimization study here that basically shows that a lot of this ore body comes into that first large open pit. And it gives us a sense of grade. It's sort of alluded to about a 1.5%, copper equivalent, head grade into a potential mine. So it's quite a high grade deposit. It's big, it's open pittable, and it's shallow. So it's got all the right rudiments to generate a lot of value for our shareholders. And we can't take much credit for that. That's just Mother Nature being very kind. But I think going back to the metallurgical test work, the mets here were some of the best, and I'm not kidding, they were some of the best I've seen in my 20-year career. I think we saw 99.7% recoveries in the copper. I'll say it again, 99.7% recoveries in the copper. We couldn't believe it. Gold, we saw, over I think it was over 97% recoveries. It's a fantastic ore body with fantastic mets, shallow, it's open pittable. Therefore, hopefully we expect it to be low cost, subject to some further work on the PFS. And the other great thing is it's near the town of Rockhampton and the coast. So we don't need a lot of infrastructure. We can house all our staff in the town of Rockhampton. We're very close to very large ports. In fact, the Gladstone port's the fourth largest port in the world by metals throughput. So we're just really spoiled here that, this deposit is located where it is, and it's got the sort of the fundamentals that it does have. So again, we can't take any credit for that as a management team. It's just, sheer luck that we've come across a fantastic ore body. So
that is fantastic. Now, you mentioned the pre-feasibility study and all the work that you're doing over there with the met work. Okay, so what are the other key milestones for the study, and how do you envision this project sort of evolving in the coming stages based on the positive results that you've received so far?
Yeah, okay, good question. So at the moment, we're looking at a PFS to basically determine whether this will be a standalone mine, which we expect it will be. So those results we expect to have out in the first quarter of next year. So we're madly sort of working towards that at the moment, and that's sort of part of our strategy of progressing the exploration work in parallel with the development work. And I alluded to that right at the start, and it might be worth mentioning why we do that. We think as a management team, if we can get to a critical mass, i.e. enough resource to mine quickly, and get the PFS started and the mining license application, it'll really fast track that transition into production. So even though we're still finding new ore bodies and we're still growing the resource and all those great things, we're deliberately moving down this PFS path early, because it'll allow us to start our mining license application, and we know that takes a bit of time. So we just want to have a copper mine, ready to turn on when the world's absolutely screaming for copper, and we think that's what's ultimately going to generate the most value for our shareholders. So, and whether that's 2025, 26, we'll wait and see. Sorry, we're not going to be ready in that timeframe, but we think that this demand, obviously on the back of the electrification of the world, is really coming. So we want to be in a position to be able to service that demand and hopefully generate some outsized returns for our shareholders. So going back to the PFS, the key things that we're working on now, we've done the pit optimization, we've done the mets, and they're both at PFS level. So they're the sort of the bulk of a PFS typically. So we're now working on, things like, the pit wall angles. So they call that geotechnical work. We're doing some environmental work, and we're looking at the flow sheet of a potential mine. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll have some regular updates over the coming months as to how that's progressing.
Yeah, brilliant. Andrew, I've got sort of a sneaky question here. So I know
sure.
the Queensland government is quite, they've set some net zero targets, for the future. They're quite bullish on that. Do you and your team foresee any sort of impediments in terms of getting licensing and permitting and things like that from the Queensland government?
Yeah, look, it's a bit early to say, but I think the best way to answer that question would be to say that, we really value the local community around the Mt Chalmers mine. There is a small township about 1.5 kilometres away, and that town was I suppose set up to be a mining town when this mine was previously in production. So there's a lot of great history around the town, around the mine. But we've worked really hard on showing both the local community and also the regulators that we can develop this mine sustainably. And so some of the things that we've been doing, we've actually now bought the 5 rural farms, small farms over the mine site. So, which is a big sort of, I suppose, de-risking exercise. So we don't have to, coexist with, with other farmers at the actual mine site. And we're actually I mentioned right at the start, we're actually one of only 3 ASX listed companies, and this is from BHP down, by the way, that's certified carbon neutral today. So wow. So we've been, that whole mine site is completely off grid. We're using solar. We've got a couple of solar farms up there. We've got a small wind turbine, and these aren't big systems. We've got a reasonably small footprint at this stage, but obviously that will grow. We've got a big battery backup system. We're really working hard to show that we can deliver this sustainably. And I think those sort of conversations, or those initiatives rather, have really helped us with some early conversations with the regulator and about this permitting approvals process. So far we're going really well. We know we can develop this sustainably. It's already a disturbed site, and I think we're showing that we're good custodians of the site. So fingers crossed that bodes well for the permitting and approvals process.
That's amazing. And Andrew, you already answered my next question, which was on the sustainability part of your project. I think it's unheard of, honestly. I think that, the mining industry, resources industry knows that it has to change and it has to pivot, to remain relevant, and also to be kind of an ethical investment, in the investment community. So well done. It sounds amazing what you guys are doing, and for such a newly listed company, it really is phenomenal. So yeah, well done, and hats off to you.
No, look, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We've got a great team behind the scenes that have been really pushing this. So yeah, a lot of the thanks goes to them.
Brilliant. And Andrew, just one final question for our audience. Is there one final message that you would like to leave with our small caps audience, about QMines? We've covered a lot, so just final. Yeah,
sure. Look, I think the fact that we've made 2 discoveries, in the matter of the last couple of weeks says that this is going to grow, and it's going to grow quickly. So it's something, it's hard to keep the smile off my face. It's something we're very excited about. So it's going to grow. And I think the other thing to think about, we're all here to generate our own returns. So, from a 25 million market cap today, with potentially one of Australia's next copper mining opportunities or production opportunities, in a backdrop where there's only really 4 or 5 copper producers on the ASX, I think we can generate some real outsized returns for our shareholders. So off a very low base. So I'm very excited about it. I'm a very big shareholder in the business. Put a lot of our own family, capital into the company. So we really believe it, and I think the next couple of months really could be very transformational for the business. So it's an exciting time to be a shareholder.
Amazing, Andrew. You've got the right team, the right place, the right time with the copper sort of thematic. So well done. That is really, really exciting. I look forward to watching QMines. And thank you so much for joining. Thanks for having this discussion. And yeah, hope to see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess. No, I really appreciate all the great questions, and nice to catch up again, and look forward to chatting again.